Oh, lovely. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another awesome episode of Gothically Yours, Professor M. I'm Professor M, and today's very special lecture has to deal with the ups and downs of being a goth in the goth subculture. Now, today's very unique lecture, I'm going to be talking about 14 positives and 6 negatives. And this lecture came out of a comment left by Lauren Norell, whose this video is dedicated to. Thank you, Lauren. And the talk that I'm about to have, that I discovered that there were more positives being a goth than there were negatives. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy this very special lecture. Join me. So I'm just going to jump right in. Over here to my right, I have a list of 14 positives. And at the very end of this video, make sure that you stay to the very, very end to hear one more very special positive thing I need to share with you about being a goth. Just jumped into my head at the last second. With that being said, let's talk about number 1 on the list. Being a goth, you actually have a wonderful sense of community and belonging. When you discover that there are hundreds of thousands, probably millions of us out there, a guesstimate million, that we are part of a vast community of people, you realize that you're not alone anymore and that you belong to a large group of people. So a very positive thing, and number 1 on my list, is community and belonging. Just look at Amaraluna, 20,000 to 25,000 attendees in a single venue. Speaks volumes there. Number 2 on my list of positives here, freedom to express ourselves, and I love fashion. Freedom to wear what you want to wear, freedom to do the things that you want to do, but to express ourselves the way that we freely feel is a very, very, very positive thing that a goth has the right to do. We express our liberties with that. Number 3 on my list is you become a music affectionado. Whether you like it or not, the reason why you are watching this very video today is because of something that happened back in 1976 during the post-punk movement. And this was the big bang that ignited the goth culture that we have today. So 40 years later, wow, much more than that. 40 years later, the reason why you're watching this video today is because of that very thing. Music is the base subculture which brings us all together. And not just goth music, but all types of music. And when I discovered how many different types of music that I knew about and the venues and so on and so forth, I realized that I was a music aficionado. So being a goth, you become a music aficionado. Number 4 on my positive list is the appreciation for the dark arts. It sounds so Harry Potterish. The dark arts, dark literature, and dark history. So art, dark literature, and dark history. I'll talk a little bit about the dark art, paintings, and other types of artistic renderings that people go, ooh, that's a little bit morbid for me. Dark literature, all the way from the beginning of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley all the way up to the modern Anne Rice's and Stephen King's, the dark literatures. You have such an appreciation for. And without those literary works by Anne Rice and Stephen King, we wouldn't have movies today. Think about that were based upon those books. We have a double appreciation for both the dark literature and the dark movies that were created then, and history. Do you have Gothic friends that love the Renaissance, the Tudors, all of that medieval stuff? Sure, you probably do. Appreciation for the dark arts, the dark literatures, and dark history. Number 5 on Professor M's list of positives over here, being true to oneself. This took me a long time to come to my senses to realize that if you want to do something, well, do it. I'm in my 50s now, and I'm so much different than I was in my 20s. Now, when you're in your 20s, and I'm talking to any baby bat out there, you have limitations on what you can and cannot do, probably because you probably still live under your parents' home. However, this is a time when you're entering college and you start adventuring out into freedom. And you realize, due to a lack of money, you can't always purchase and get the things that you want. However, I will guarantee, in my most heart of hearts, as you age, the things that you so desire, you will be able to purchase and get. I waited years to have a substantial wardrobe in which to wear, and I bought each and every piece one by one. So being true to oneself is very important, finding and looking deep within. Number 6 on my list of positive things about being a goth is you meet the most creative people. And I'm not just talking about the artists out there. We're talking about the seamstresses, the designers, the musicians, the writers. I have met a plethora of amazing gothic people that are into amazing things. Very, very creative. DIY, do it your goth. DIGY. Get creative, people. I tell you, we have an extremely, extremely, extremely creative subculture that we belong to. Okay? Go out and do it. Sew it, break it, remend it, redesign it, go thrifting. You don't have to buy stuff. Number 7 on my list over here, we have a subculture that is ever evolving. And this is one of the coolest things about being a goth. We don't have a stagnant culture. It is in motion. It is evolving right in front of us. We are in the 3rd wave, and the fashions have changed. We've added new family branches to our family tree. Right now there's bubblegum goth, there's glitter goth, we've got cyber and geek goth. There's so many different venues now. So going from traditional, as you go up in vampire and Victorian goths like myself, and it branches out and branches out, you will discover at the top branches they are still evolving to this day. And the music is also evolving. We have a really fresh subculture. So being goth, it's not stagnant. Okay, number 8. 8 on my list over here. Goths are very accepting of others. They're less judgmental. I've been in many circles where I realized that all walks of life were included in. Didn't matter about your gender, race, or creed, religion, or whatever. They were less judgmental. We are combined through a base subculture of music, and that is basically all that had mattered. And I always thought that, well, if you dressed very nicely, that was also an open door. Number 9 on my list. Many goths that I know of think outside the box. They have a revolutionary thinking. You get a bunch of workaday people in the outer world, and you get them together, and they all think alike. Truly, they all think alike. A lot of them even dress alike, act alike, talk alike, have the same type of cars, like the same type of movies. It's like the clones, photocopies of each other. But when you meet up with a goth, they seek out such originality sometimes. They find the most obscure things. They think outside of the box. And I've always enjoyed that about the subculture. Meeting other people who are free thinkers. So that is number 9 on my list. Going into number 10, and how could you not love this? The ability to wear black every day. Now, there's a downside about having a gothic wardrobe that's huge. It's only coming in one particular color. Now, as a Victorian goth, I have a range of colors that I wear. However, when you're going through your closet, it's like, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? I think it's over here. You're actually looking for something in a closet, but black is a very, very elegant color. And I find that elegance pours over from the subculture into the workaday world. Just wanted to share that with you. Number 11 on my list. Many people Do not bother with you. This is number 11. Sometimes as a goth, there's people that go, ah, and they give you a distance. They actually will leave you alone. They give you your space. I call that the goth space. Now come closer. If someone is bothering you as a goth, and someone walks up and they're like, oh, why are you dressed like that? And it's like, that whole Halloween is over deal. There's a 99.99% chance they're extremely interested in what you're doing. So much so, I would say that they are curious. Because if they weren't curious, they would just walk on by. They would ignore you. They wouldn't even look at you. But someone that pinpoints you and makes you feel uncomfortable, probably a good chance they want to dress like you and be like you, actually. They can see something deep inside of you, that you have a particular type of freedom that maybe they want. Think about that. Food for thought. Going on to my list over here, number 12. Each and every goth that I've ever met has an incredible story. I have never met two goths that are alike, which is number 13 on my list, but let's go back to number 12. Each and every goth I have has had an incredible story. How they became a goth, their gothy background. They have absolutely amazing stories to share, and some of them make me go, oh, and that's what I love. I read all the comments on this channel, and many of you who add very mass or very large comments, I always gravitate towards them and say, this person has a lot of interesting stories to share, or this person's a very interesting person. I have met goths who have incredible backgrounds, incredible histories. Going into number 13, which is a reflection for 12, I have never met two goths alike to this day. Every goth I have met, even though we all wear black and have similarities of things, complete individuals, completely individuals in thoughts, in ideas, in statements, in ideologies, everything. No two goths I have ever met are alike, and I love it. They're not clones, like I said, of people in the workaday world, which dress all the same and act all the same. And number 14 on my list over here, goths are extremely residuant people. I learned in high school, doing the whole, gee, you're an artist and you feel like an outcast type of deal, that you put up with a lot of crap. And that builds up a sense of confidence and resilience to just go, right, this is my life. I'm going to live it the way I want to. Resilience. Goths are very resilient, or we begin to learn a sense of confidence and resilience that brings us into a fruition to become a very happy person for ourselves. Now, with that being said, I have just named off 14 very awesome positives. Don't forget my last 15th one will be at the end of this video. And let's now talk about some negatives. Okay, so I just turned my paper over. You know there's had to be some negatives. With every positive, there's a negative, right? Okay. Number 1 on my list over here, the misconception that you belong to a cult. I have had very unusual conversations with people who do not understand anything about the goth culture, and that has come up. Oh, do you belong to a cult? What religion are you? I have to explain very carefully, no, we're not a cult, that this is a music sub-based culture and blah, blah, blah. Number 2, your family doesn't get you. This is a downside to being a goth. Unless you have what I had. I had a goth mom, and that made my life a lot better. Having at least one parent who is into the alternative scene, that is really cool, because she projected me forward and was supportive to me all throughout my childhood. Your parents don't, sometimes your parents just don't get you. I should do a whole nother lecture on what to say to your parents about Gothism, for the baby bats out there. Number 3 on my list, having to explain a lot. This drives me crazy. Going out and having to explain everything. I usually start at the very beginning and work my way from the Addams Family into the Haunted Mansion, and then to things like Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands to let people know where I am. And if they're following what I'm mopping, and hopefully they're mopping what I'm spilling from that point on, I'm like, okay. But I always have to go through the same routine with them. You have to explain a lot. That's one of the downsides to being a goth. I can actually hear some of the goth brothers and sisters say, don't say anything at all and just walk away. Number 4 on my list over here, people sometimes stare. Must be my awesome fashion style. They sometimes stare. They just do. You can either look back at them and say, can I help you? Or you can ignore it. So basically, that's one of the downsides. But I believe that what they're really doing is that they have found you to be very, again, let's go back, curious. And there's some, I say, magnetic gravitation for they wanting to know what you are and why you are what you are. And so a negative can be a positive. Number 5 on my list. I've heard this many times, that being a goth can be very expensive. Says who? It depends on what area of goth you are in. For myself, a Victorian goth, well, a lot of historical material does cost a lot, especially if you want to buy some high quality material and other cool stuff. But you build a wardrobe and it takes years, and you have a deep appreciation for every single object and article of clothing that you own and collect along the way. Yeah. It's not all up front. You don't have to buy from Amazon. You don't have to buy from expensive shops, whatever. You can make it. That's what, thrift stores are available. Dye it, sew it, rip it, make it, design it. DIY. That's the power of goth. That's where it all began. And when they say, oh, it's expensive, I'm like, huh? Really? I challenge that one. It can be. The reason why this is on my list is those boots, those edgy boots, are pricey. Take it from me. And the last one on the list over here of negatives, number 6, dealing with elitists and gatekeepers within the goth community. Now, this is coming from an elder goth, and I have some good advice. I have just been circulating this in my mind now for over a year, and I've come up with a conclusion. The reason why there's gatekeeping and elitism, which didn't exist during the 80s, which then came into the 90s, is gatekeepers and those elitists want to absolutely positively make sure that you are not here to harm the subculture. They don't want anyone coming in to wreck it, destroy their clubhouse, so to speak. They want you to come in and be genuine, to know deep down inside that you're a goth and you belong there. That's what gatekeeping and elitism is all about. So I put a positive spin on a negative thing. With that being said, I have just shot off 14 positives and 6 negatives. Now I'm going to share off the last one, which is number 15, before closing out my video. So with that being said, I finally come to the end of my lecture. And number 15 on my list, which popped into my head just prior to filming, a very wonderful, positive thing about being a goth. Goths are not afraid of the dark. With that being said, I hope that you've enjoyed this very special lecture. And as always, gothically yours, Professor M.